Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dreary Erie.
Hello. Remember when I used to say the intro? Good times.
And
How
now
things have
I
changed.
say it all the time, and I never fuck it up, and I never call people scrubs.
I forgot about subscribers. I haven't done videos in a while.
Welcome
Last
back, all you scrub-scribing bitches. As of this video, 19 strong.
Ooh. Um so this is something I believe we're doing the idea I just came up with. So when I started getting the ideas to like, hey, I want a DM, which is Dungeon Master, I didn't know where to start. I would ask Liam, and I didn't
Okay,
really.
this leads to a fun caveat. It's completely unrelated. It's a fun little rant. But to this very day, in addition about editions of D&D that I do not even own and have just a very basic understanding of the rules, I am asked how things work by
This
the
is very true.
DM. The DM comes to me and say, "Liam, how does this work?" And I'm like, "I don't know. Fuck, I'll come up with a house rule for it if you really want to know."
Which is good. Yeah, that's why we say he's the secret DM. Because it's the one everyone goes to for some reason. Like I could send you the PDFs.
Or when someone's like, "Would this character work? Am I allowed to play this character?" And they look to me, and I'm like, "I don't know. You should probably ask Nick. He's the one DMing."
That one I don't do because I know better. This is
It's funny for all the character development that your characters have. You mostly stay in a relatively normal range.
normal being relative.
Yes. So
So this is going to be a guide for basically how to start DMing and what to do and where we ourselves messed up and
this is mostly going to be my mistakes. I'll start with what I believe is one of the most important ones. Number one, start small. For goodness sakes.
you yes,
When
very
you start in D&D, you have a lot of perceptions about what it should be like. You've seen like the works of Tolkien where it's like Lord of the Rings. You've got people traveling everywhere across this vast world, set piece to set piece, all of them somehow in New Zealand, but still very varied areas. And you want to get all of that. You want to create a
you
campaign.
just want to slather yourself in all that buttery goodness of different realms and ideas. Don't
You
do that.
yeah, you do not do that. You want to show people elves, dwarves, gnomes, halflings, orcs, all of this at the same time. You want to incorporate every kind of enemy that you can. Don't. In
Don't.
fact, don't even do a really long campaign, at least not to begin with. Start with smaller adventures that maybe take like a few sessions to complete. Trust me, you will appreciate this advice because we had so many campaigns that started up and failed, and the reason why is we tried to throw too much in. I
Yes,
even
we've never finished a campaign because of this.
I even recently made that mistake when I introduced a gigantic new world that I had invented, and then I only realized later that I had invented a world and not a campaign.
Which
And
is actually a lot of the time my flaw because I start my campaigns with drawing a map and creating an idea and set of laws and it
do I have a problem with creating a vast world? Of course not. I think that creating a vast game world is actually quite useful. Like, unless, of course, like most people will do, they'll actually use a published setting. Uh,
Mhm.
Again, I don't do that because I don't like to be caught by the player that has read every single book on these settings who will kick my ass for not knowing the setting. So, of course, I tend to make my own. Uh, I am very guilty of using historical basis for it. But, again, we always created these huge sprawling worlds, and it was always like, okay, you're in this one really huge major city. Let's say like this is the city of all the humans. This is where all the humans live, and you stay there for like a few hours. And then you're like, okay, this is the city of humans. This is all this has to offer. Let's go to the city of dwarves next. And really,
And
what you're doing is you're cheapening the world and you're making it less realistic that way. And worst of all, you're making it boring.
also because if you're gonna have transportation along a broad area, you need to know how to do it or you need to make it interactive because a lot of times just now you're here.
You're fast
Oh.
traveling.
Basically, it's fast travel. And that's not fun.
You need to start making traveler star charts. for things.
Which is what I'm doing with a current campaign. Actually, I've made a nautical map of like where the characters can actually go without being horribly murdered.
Yeah. So I figure what you always need to do is you start small. You have a few villages, maybe clustered around one major city, and this is where most of your action's going to be. There's going to be maybe a few dungeons in between, some unscouted areas, but you're not traversing the entire world. Because again, that actually prevents you from making a lot of details. You end up with towns where it's just like you go to the town and you meet.
Ohio.
Yeah, there's Ohio again. Uh, but then you meet the shopkeep, and it's literally just some generic guy without a face. And I did actually change that in my most recent campaign. Everyone had a name. A lot of people had backstories because
Uh,
I created this vast world, but I was keeping it in one particular spot.
mm-hmm. Which is where the kingdom of men is. It's possibly the biggest thing we have, and everyone wants a piece of it in the timeline.
Yeah,
So the next thing is if you have multiple DMs in a session,
you're doing something
sorry, not a
wrong.
session. You're doing something wrong. If you have multiple DMs in your group, um, it can be hard because if you want to use the same game space like we do, because we have one continuous storyline, you gotta space it out. You gotta have the DMs be able to figure out where who's going to do what.
Yeah, this is kind of the issue. Is as a group, we're rather interesting in that we are a group of like dramatists and authors. None of us is not an artist in one way or the other. We're all either writers or artists or filmmakers or something like
Thank
that.
you.
So we all really enjoy being the DM at certain points, and almost all of us have wanted to try DMing at least. And
I'm the most recent addition to that actually too.
mhm. But for goodness sakes, uh, just keep it in your pants when it comes to DMing. I mean, you want to whip your DM cock out. You want to show everyone, like, what a great DM you are. But honestly, don't break up a campaign in order to do that.
Yeah, look, we have that problem. Everyone DMs, and everyone's like, "Hey, I'm DMing today," and we're like,
Or,
"Oh
or
no."
everyone's like, hey man, your campaign's good, but when you're done the campaign, do you think I could DM a campaign? And what they're really saying is, okay, motherfucker, I don't like this campaign that you're doing. I want to make my own campaign, and we're gonna play it, and you're gonna roll a fucking character right now. And they're
Which
pointing a
is
gun,
exactly
and they're pointing a gun at you, and you're like, okay, man, sure, you can do the campaign after I'm done. They're like, it's cool, man, that's cool. Fires gun in the air. You're like, holy shit.
this is actually what it's very much like in our group, and it's so terrible. So keep it in your pants. You don't need that noodle out at all times. You know.
Another point on DMing is uh, basically don't DM until you're ready. You need to be familiar with the system. You need to be more familiar with it, preferably than your players. This is an issue I ran into. I'm generally considered to be the most competent dungeon master, but I did not have the money to shill out for the books for 5th edition. So, when I'm DMing, my players have instant access to a lot of items and materials and stuff like that, but I didn't shell out for it, and I ain't no pirate, so I didn't steal them offline, or yeah, off the internet. Uh, though
But
obviously,
if you can, there is you just have to look around. You can get them off the internet. It's not that
yeah.
hard.
But still, it was like when you're rushed into that situation, it's just like, I don't have time to read through these giant ass books.
It is. It is. I've
Besides,
never finished reading
it
the book.
to get the 5th edition materials, which I did eventually do, was to undermine my position that we should all be playing Pathfinder anyways.
Yes, we should be playing Pathfinder. Um, the other thing is exactly that. You need to know the rules. First time I DM'd, I had no clue how combat worked, which is bad since I've been playing D&D for a while now.
Okay, guys,
I,
we're playing Shadowrun. Just roll 20 d6s and see what happens.
is that how it works? I can't remember.
Playing Traveler or Shadowrun is just like, okay, guys, shit ton of d6s.
uh, so I didn't know how combat worked, and I was like, I don't know. And so I did a battle. Everyone looked really bored, but I may have been reading them wrong.
Zombies.
Yeah, it was zombies
It wasn't that
because
people were bored, it's that people were like clinically tired. It was so
that's true.
late.
So rule number three: don't play when you're like at 12 at night.
I don't know why
Unless
we constantly break this rule. We have people who have worked like even especially in my case, though I somehow have better endurance when it comes to D&D at least. People have worked like 8 hour shifts in hell and at their workplace, and then they come home, and then immediately it's like D&D, and you're supposed to give it your all when you're entirely exhausted from a day at work.
yeah,
For me, I don't know. I'm assuming that I keep like a stamina reserve specifically for D&D, like subconsciously.
got a D&D later. Oh,
I
Nick
was
could
like,
contact me at
I am
any moment.
going to be completely shit at my job today so that I can play D&D later.
And then you realize you're the best person working at that McDonald's besides your sister, and you're like, oh,
Oh damn.
oh.
You just name dropped the big M, the Golden Arches.
Oh shoot, did I?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk about McDonald's at our in our hometown later. It's an experience. It's a fun time. Uh,
In any case, yeah, essentially don't generally don't play when you're tired. I know this is difficult because a lot of times you want all the players in. I guess this ties into the other my next point, which would be don't wait on all of your players to be there.
no, because I was DMing recently, and a player said, "Yeah, I can make it." One day, and the next day he's like, "No, I can't make it. I'm at my aunt's," and I was like, "Oh."
For
But
the
I
most
need you for this campaign. And so I just kind of left without him and said I'll deal with him later.
That's the thing. You cannot have it so that you have to rely specifically on a certain player to be there. That's just
Well, it
not
wasn't even that. It's just how the campaign dictates that he needs to
yeah.
get these things done, and I
Yeah.
can't get those things done if he's
Yeah,
not there.
that's just like not how role playing games really are supposed to work. You need to find a way to work around player absences because it's gonna happen, and chances are it's gonna happen rather frequently.
Like I'm like here's things I do when I'm gone. It's generally established canon that if I'm playing a druid, I'm just in like Liam's character's pants at all times when I'm not there, and it saves the day sometimes. But yeah, don't expect your players to always be able to do it. There's times when certain players won't be able to
Yeah, and
make it. I
and
was
just I'd say just because one player can't make it doesn't mean you should cancel the whole thing entirely.
no, because there's always ways to get around it.
Yeah, for the most part, not having one character around is not going to break your game.
Like we consistently don't have one person. Like I was often not able to come for a lot of campaigns, and they just went on without me, which sometimes led to funny situations, and other times led to me just saving the day.
I also that's another little side point that I'm going to get to is the fact that uh, I used to be like completely unemployed. I was the only person who had absolutely nothing going on. So I was
I disagree. As someone who had nothing going on for a lot of time,
but
and
essentially
still do.
like I was always free. So everyone always like came to me like even during like though the summer it was different because I was like working. But they could always count on me to show up. But nowadays I've got this thing where people are still calling me while I'm working, and they're like, "Yo, dude, what's up? What you doing?" And it's like I'm working. I have a full time
Do they
job.
actually?
Go
I
the
know
fuck
better.
away. they're
Oh my god, I don't. I didn't actually know that. I don't.
They're not like really calling me, but they're like giving me text messages. I'm like, "Motherfucker, you know my work schedule."
I actually do not have your work schedule. First of all, second of all, I'm not those people. The most I ask is, hey, when you getting off work?
I'm just like these bratty fucks. They need to get their fucking shit together. I don't see any of them working a full time job.
Then they have school to deal with, and I'm just like, I don't work a job, but I'm in high school and I'm busy, and
And he's like, I'm making all these YouTube's monies.
you see this fat dough, like these. I'm gonna guess. Hey, put a bet. How many views do you think?
Hmm. Anyways, we got a bit of a caveat going there, or really like a rant. But in any case, again, kind of going further on, uh, would okay, because this is again talking about character availability. Uh, how often do you want to murder characters? Is a
If
good
they
thing.
do something stupid, it's probably for the best.
Like in all honesty, I've made a video about when I think it's appropriate to kill characters, and it's a dangerous road that you walk, especially depending on it varies from individuals in your group how sensitive they are and what kind of campaign they're expecting. Uh, but the main thing you need to remember as a DM is don't put up with bullshit. You give players an inch, you give them a mile.
This is
Never,
true.
never is that statement more true than in D&D or something like that. They ask for a magical weapon, and then you like rather conspicuously give it to them. That is going to make them think that they can do whatever they want. They can like walk over you. Give them too many easy battles and they'll think that they can fuck up anything. For example, give them too many easy encounters, they'll think they can march up to the fucking king and stab him to death and then take on all of his guards.
Mm-hmm. Which,
And
which, does this? Can we bring up the fact if you don't want it dead, don't stat it?
a very important lesson for people to learn.
Something we like. That's why the
Don't
gods.
stat Cthulhu.
Yeah, if you don't want Cthulhu dead, don't stat him. Basically, if you don't want
Because
Nate, if you don't want them killing gods, just don't stat the gods.
because
They can't.
okay, Call of Cthulhu, stats Cthulhu. Pathfinder, stats Cthulhu. In either of those games, is Cthulhu really beatable? Hell no. Even in Pathfinder, he's practically impossible to defeat. But did you stat him? Yes. So guess what? There's probably a bullshit way to kill him.
And that's name's probably Contagion.
Yeah, at least in Pathfinder, I really can't see you ever beating Cthulhu in Call of Cthulhu. But if Cthulhu has been successfully summoned, you've already fucked up royally. So
True.
that is the biggest lesson I might have learned as a DM. Do not fucking give people anything.
No. Only if it's something reasonable, like the airship. I mean, I never thought, hey, I'm invincible now. After I got the airship, I was like, cool,
But of course,
I got an
also
airship.
I also stated that the airship was partly me spiting the rest of the party for like outwardly being hostile to another party member.
And then the whole party became hostile to everyone, and it was not. Once again,
Yes,
okay, when you hear stories about that campaign, this is what you gotta do. Hey, that was pretty cool. No, don't do that campaign.
true, true.
That was doomed.
Yeah, that's I guess leads into a bit of a storytelling perspective. I would like to state is try to avoid making, and I'm like the biggest hypocrite saying this, try to avoid making a city of something. And I do that like I did that quite a bit until recently. I had the kingdom of men and the kingdom of elves, and it's like such a racially subdivided uh, little situation that I created. Or, we'll have like this town is known for mining specifically. And you can do that. And in fact, in real life, that's often the case. But especially avoid it along racial lines. Because, again, then you can just get something boring and monotonous. Or something where it's like, wow, really? It's just all humans here? That's weird.
Yeah, that was my initial reaction to the Kingdom Men. It's all humans.
Well, that's
They
saying it
never.
wasn't. That's saying its name was misleading. It wasn't actually humans. It's just the homeland of humans.
That and if you're doing a D&D campaign, put humans in. I can't tell you how many campaigns I went without meeting another human.
It's weird because I think one of the most basic rules of D&D is that humans have become the dominant species.
And yet you never see them, and it's strange and it's weird and it's kind of funny when you're a human.
Well, it's funny when you're human and it's like all the player characters aren't humans. But yeah, I like I said, avoid that monotony. I finally got over that in some of my other campaigns where I had kingdoms that were multi-racial and were completely distinct, though generally they had a majority race, but that wasn't what it was based off of. Uh, though I honestly admit that the D&D rule books are guilty of a lot of playing the races against each other thing, which I don't think is necessarily fair because that would trick new DMs into thinking that, yeah, all these races do live separately from each other, and there's like a giant no man's land separating all of them.
Which is not true at all. I mean, I can understand if you separate the elves, but
Because
at the
they're
same time,
douchebags.
they are the douchebags of the game. But no, the elves are often like if you they can be hostile together, but they can be in the same town. Just think of like Detroit in the race riots. Think of it. That's a really bad way to put it,
Yeah.
but it's a lot like that. It can be a lot like that, where they can be all there, but not like each other at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can definitely be there, but there's tension between them. Or, there's warfare. Warfare happens quite often. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Though that goes back to the point of not planning things too big. My biggest one of my biggest tips I would say is don't have your players uh go into war against another group.
No,
Don't straight
no.
up have them fight in a war because it's boring as hell and they'll probably die like really easily in real warfare.
Like, because the thing with warfare is, hey, that's a cool idea. I've seen lots of warfare movies. That would be cool. I guess I can segue into here. Don't be cinematic. D&D is not a cinematic thing.
Oh, such a important lesson to have. Yeah.
I'm guilty of this because, of course, I make film, and that's one of my favorite things to do. And I dream in film. So I think everything cinematically, which is really bad.
Yeah. Most certainly you do not want to do that in D&D because by its very virtue, it is a game. And we have this talk when it comes to video gaming too, and what the issue was with like the games like The Order 1886 where it was all talk of like look at how nice it looks and how cinematic it is. That is not what a game is.
When you make something cinematic, you remove the freedom of choice in it.
Yes, and do not remove interactivity from a game because, well, that's kind of mostly the point of games is they are interactive by their nature.
Yeah, like if you make something, because the thing with D&D that makes it so great is it has so many options and it's so open ended. When you make it cinematic, you're taking away the open endedness of it all.
Mm-hmm. And that's another thing where I talked about like it's almost where I was talking about making things too grandiose. This is where a lot of the points come together. Is the cinematic argument is if you want to make like a Peter Jackson movie or something like that, don't do that with your D&D. And like I said, keep it
No.
small.
Yes, keep it small. Um, Music is a very big thing in D&D for us. We will constantly play music while we play the game.
Last
I
game it
guess
got freaking ridiculous.
it was good. I appreciated it
We
at
will
least.
play all the Cruacon music.
So basically, the thing with this is I don't know why we do it or what who started the tradition of playing music. I guess it's because we don't like the silence that can occur, and it's just this long droning noise, and people lose attention. I guess because we were all ADHD. Um, but a lot of the time, music gets in the way.
Yeah, don't over rely on music. Specifically, if you do use music, make sure it's thematic. Make sure it has a purpose. Like if music's in a tavern or something like that, or music's being used for a specific purpose, then I think it's good. But a lot of times it's just noise.
Mm-hmm. We last campaign. I don't even know why we were who chose heavy metal. Very thematic. Very thematic. Apparently.
Well, you see, that was, I guess, technically me when you wanted a an Irish sounding theme, so I suggested we go with what I felt would be the least offensive version of Brian Boru's March, which is the Cruacron heavy metal version of it.
What do you mean by least offensive?
Because the rest of the group would probably get pissed off at the sound of the normal Brian Boru's March.
Oh, you mean the bagpipes?
The Ilian pipes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I figured they would get really pissy about how it sounded, so I was like, metal. And then for some reason, Nick just kept playing Cruacon. No matter what the songs were, if they had any thematic purpose.
And that's bad. That's really bad. Don't do that. Don't.
Then Luke started playing some Disturbed, and that was even worse.
Like
Because then it didn't even have the Celtic feel to it.
because like I obviously the Quintel family's very Celtic. They were started as a Celtic joke, not a joke. They were literally started to be Celtic. And they continued to be, and so I like to play Celtic music with them. But the thing is, like me and Liam like to figure out what the theme music of characters would be. That's fine. That's fine because that's thematic. That
Need to
fits.
play O'Neill's March at some point. It's a really good folk tune. But yeah, it's all about thematic like stuff. Let's say in Call of Cthulhu, if you were to play jazz music, let's say when you're in a bar scene, that's appropriate because a lot of the bars at that time you would be playing jazz music there. Uh, Now, when you're out on the streets in the game, is that necessarily appropriate? Not really.
What do you play when you're on the streets though?
You could have some sound effects of cars going by and things like that.
Which is something we've never done. Just
Hmm.
you, I don't
It's
know.
not hard to find these effects if you just put the time into it. Uh,
No, no, it's not.
I most of the time just prefer silence unless I like purposely want to use music for a specific encounter. I remember one time when I was having an encounter with that one gang in Boston, I used King of Fairies. Great theme, by the way. Uh, so yeah, music. If it's thematic, you can use it, but honestly, don't use it as a crutch. Uh, so far, Luke's been our music man. It's generally been pretty good. His music that he plays isn't very intrusive, and I think most of the time it goes good for adventuring. Only
Hmm.
complaint for Luke, if he's still watching this video, fuck Requiem for a Dream. I'm sick of it. We're never playing it again.
Wait, what's Requiem for a Dream again?
Oh god, it's like that. It's like the one theme from Inception
Oh,
that people just play fucking constantly, and I'm like, no, I'm done
no,
with it. I'm fucking done with it.
no, like I've been telling Nick, hey, this is the music I want to be the theme of my character, okay? I know it's a little strange, but think about it. Think about it. And if you can get because if it fits well enough, and the DM's like, I guess it fits. It makes sense.
I don't know, mine are relatively obvious. Of course, Huxley gets the Grenadiers March.
I was for Montague. I want to use like the White Stripes Rain because obviously he committed a sin, got punished by a demon, and basically is a little upset at that demon. And it's a song about it's song that has lyrics that fit perfectly for themes I used for a while. Things like when I wanted to make Thames a little more of a serious character, I was listening to Judas, and I was like, "Hey," by Cage the Elephant, and at some point I used "Wayfaring Stranger" for Thames.
Hmm.
Thames' backstory obviously being thrown out of his forest, not being able to return, and just kind of traveling from there on out.
Hmm. You know what? I think that of all the tips you can give to an aspiring DM, the most important one is probably to consult your players beforehand and to gauge their opinions on things. You don't
Hmm.
necessarily need to like do what the players say because then of course eventually you're going to end up in the situation I talked about earlier where the players just can walk all over you. Uh, but I think you have to take their ideas into consideration because otherwise it's way too easy to end up in a game where everyone's upset or people are bored and things like that. Most commonly, I find this manifesting in the idea of a campaign essentially becoming a meat grinder, which is, of course, the term used for when you are essentially throwing the characters into a constant grind fest of fighting monsters constantly. Uh, a lot of DMs think they need to do that so that they can have credibility as a dungeon master. Uh,
Credibility is important as a dungeon master. I should point this out that I have none as of right now.
yes. When
I
you
like
have
to.
Thames Quintel drop down from an airship in the middle of
I,
1930s
I,
New
I.
York, you have no credibility.
It's because I also like this is just how I write things. I like to write things with a little bit of humor in them, and
You'll
sometimes like
make Katsuhara pay 4,000 yen for a meat.
okay, let me so things that you need to know. Uh, like this is an off top. This isn't off topic.
Dirty
So we play.
racist roll fizzle beef.
No, I'm dirty. I'm roll all day fizzle beef, Liam. Dirty racist Maxwell Snow. When you're playing things like Call of Cthulhu, racism's okay. It's in character.
Oh, come on. That's like you're just trying to justify the fact that you like to throw around the N-word.
No, but it's era correct, and I'm a big person of having things be era correct.
It's era appropriate. Everyone was fucking racist as hell back then. Hell, 1930s, that's like what? 30 years before then, if you were Irish, you couldn't get a job?
Mm-hmm.
That's fucked up. Back then, they were still racist towards a lot of white people. I mean, 1930s, they were racist as hell towards Slavic people.
One day, as a compilation of times I've been interrupted.
Oh god, you've got
Uh,
enough already.
you've got to be era correct.
Mm.
Um,
Well, that's just
I've
my stuff for historical accuracy.
like I've like when I was doing $40 for a pound of salted meat, I was like, hey, I have multiple reasons to back this up. I know it sounds crazy, but you're a Japanese man in 1930s America. You're going to be discriminated against. Second of all, there's a major ship and event happening aboard that ship. He could make an easy profit by doing this.
But yeah, 40 pounds is still exorbitant though. Like, yeah, that's like
Have you been to like Peely Island?
no, of course I have. No, but that's like being comedically. That's comedic. That's basically saying I hate you and I don't want you spending money here, so I'm just gonna give you this offensively high price.
Which was to the point. And so I was like, I don't know, how much is meat in depression? Expensive? Probably.
Mm. So yeah, but that does lead me to another point. Is oh man, borrow from whatever sources you have. As they say, there's no story that is entirely new in the world. There's nothing new under the sun. So if you have influences, whether they be historical or from other works of literature, feel free to include aspects of that. Yeah.
There's nothing new ever written anymore.
Mm.
It's all been written before by someone.
I still remember our English teacher said something terrific where he was talking about Shakespeare, and in his class he didn't teach Shakespeare, and he said the reason for that was Shakespeare is only good for a representation of the English language at that time, because if you're looking for something original you will not find it in the works of Shakespeare.
Shakespeare never wrote anything original. They were all, this is off topic, but they were all taken from somewhere else.
Yeah, I mean, his works of about Scottish history, he takes a lot from the history of Britain by, I believe it was Saxo Grammaticus.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he purposely fudges the story so that you don't learn that Macbeth was actually a great king, and that Duncan was a shit king who couldn't even keep his subjects in line.
Yes.
Though Malcolm III was a great king as well. And yeah, but still, again, nothing new really in those stories. Well written, yes, and a great symbol of their times, yes, but not original. So I always think if you have influences, feel free to use them. Now, of course, don't like steal things wholesale, but influences are great. I know that I've learned from my experience that I'm generally more culturally aware
Inclined, yeah.
than a lot of people, and that actually helps to your advantage. If you're a big history buff or a culture buff and you know a lot of things about different cultures, feel free to use them because they'll come across as rather alien to the people that you're playing with.
Like, until a while back, I didn't realize Cathbad was a reference to Irish mythology, or the King of Men was, or a lot of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I was able to do that, and you know I can count it as a learning experience for my players as well, even though most of them I believe don't give a shit.
Oh, I care though. I actually enjoy it because, like, learning about Kuhallen's probably some of the funnest things I've ever done.
Yeah, so 300 men, 300 men, really, Kuhallen, really? I'll talk about that in another video. But essentially, yeah, and it's funny, if you look in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, they basically tell you this. There's such a thing as mythic campaigns or mythic adventures. And what that is you're literally taking stuff like the old myths, and you're telling stories like them. And they specifically mention Gilgamesh and Cuchulainn as examples of characters you can emulate. Uh, in that, like Gilgamesh's fight with Enkidu, and then eventually his search for immortality, or Cuchulainn as he bravely fought off waves of attackers in the Toyne. These are the kinds of stories that you base like a mythic campaign off of. Uh, and most certainly, I believe that you can use inspirations like that. Maybe in your universe there is a gay Bulga, there is like a legendary death spear, or something like that. I think that's perfectly fine to show your influences.
Mm-hmm. Uh, One of the major things of actually creating a campaign, though, I'm going to move on, is you have to, like, if you have a shopkeeper, or if you have a town, and you're putting shops in it, and you're making NPCs in it, you gotta make NPCs. You actually have to make personalities in, like, traits and costumes. Don't improv it.
D&D rulebooks really do help you with this as well. There's ones that allow you to quickly build NPCs' personalities if you don't have time to make each and every character unique, because let's face it, who does?
Like, one of my favorite stories to tell is the time I was playing Finn, which we'll do another day, because once again, I have a lot of Quintel.
Finn, Finn was fun, if mostly because of his interactions with my wizard character.
Finn was fun because he was a douchebag, though, too.
He was a little funny douchebag, though.
He was good at it.
I love when the DM just narrated the fact that I beat the shit out of him.
I know, and I was a little upset, but I was like, I'll accept it.
You deserved it. Just take what's coming to you.
Because the DM doesn't like me.
Get your ass beaten by an old orc. You're
So
lucky you aren't in the
basically,
military, or I would have shot you for cowardice.
so basically, we're investigating a mine, and inside this mine, I go to the bottom and I start asking this mine worker before about all like what's happening here and what's going on. Mine worker is like the most illogical NPCs I've ever met.
I love this guy.
So I talk to this mine worker and he gives me the information I need, and I'm like, and you cost me money working. I could have made working. I'm like, okay, here, I'll give it to you. I try to give it to him. Takes the money, throws it on the ground, spits on me, and it's like, you cost me money. I'm like,
You gave him far more money than he would have made from his bullshit mining job.
I know, and he just threw it on the ground. I was like, no. I was like,
And then he literally says to you, I'm an NPC with no character.
I'm like, okay, thanks. So what I'm saying is, your NPCs should have character.
God, no way to break the immersion than, like, a worthless NPC.
Yeah, doing that, and because it throws you way off. You're like, what? But I'm doing the right thing here, right? I mean, I'm helping this guy. I'm fixing what I messed up. He's just gonna keep disrespecting me and have no personality. Okay.
His personality is disrespect.
I guess credibility. If you're going to have a campaign that's going to have some humor in it, you're going to have no credibility. But at least you could have the players have fun in it.
Yeah, again, it's a lot about consultation. And it also depends on whether you're doing something unexpected. The first time I ever did a Christmas D&D session, that was unexpected and everyone enjoyed it, but it lost its novelty after a while. Mostly because I think the second one was a bit haphazard. I didn't prepare it correctly. But Fallout Christmas, that was
Oh,
a big one. Though when I talk about showing your influences, in this case I just straight up ripped off an Chest Breach video.
we should point out there's a couple of times in our canon that we rip him off. Like what was
May
the
I note that actually Brendan went so far as to tell Al Senpai what we had done, and Al Senpai was, at least he expressed approval.
and he actually was quite happy. Actually, I've had conversations with him a couple of
We need
times.
to tell everyone about what a great person Al Senpai is, of course.
Okay, so Norberline first. Okay, there we go. Said him. So Al Senpai is he's basically one of our heroes. He's one of the reasons I guess this channel exists. So in the early days of this channel, we were kind of lost and confused, and we're still doing podcasts. That's how way back it was. And we said, "Here's our podcast. Go on and check it out." And he did. He did, and he wrote back, "Here's how you could improve it. It's actually pretty good." And I was like, "Hey, you want to play D&D later, eventually?" And he said, "I'm busy right now, but I'd love to." At this point, I'm like crying because this was my idol. This is my idol talking to me, and here he is saying, "Yeah, I'll play D&D with you." And I'm like, "Oh,
Like never has, and at this point, his channel wasn't small. He had over 200,000 subscribers still at this point.
yeah."
And already, like, he responded to us, but we need to do a thank you vid later. But yeah, this is where, of course, I talk about how I ripped off Al Chestbreech's Santa Claus character. But
And his cat.
that it's and is well, that's questionable.
Okay, that's true.
I ripped Lycor off of Condor, which was a obsidian horse sort of thing.
It was an obsidian horse kind of thing mixed with Harvey.
Yes, essentially yes, because the cups.
Yes.
Yeah, so we ripped off Harvey, but then it's funny because we met Harvey, and Harvey's an interesting person.
We talked to Harvey.
It's
He's not on the channel because reasons. He will be eventually.
in any case, both of those things are worthy of their own video. Both the Christmas Fallout, and we'll talk about it again. We've gone off of very much on a tangent. This is again much like our podcast.
So that's what we're basically doing right now. We're just doing our podcast.
Yes, with a vague topic, but I think we've gone through most of our necessary DMing details. If I had to give again the most important advice is you got to be upfront with your players. You got to talk to your players. And
Sometimes you have to ignore group politics.
yeah,
Big problem.
but at the end of the day, you got to be there to give the players what they are looking for. Don't give them what they ask for, but give them what you know that they basically want, which is, a good role-playing experience.
Mm-hmm.
Or just a good game in general. So that is the sacred bond between the DM and the player that must be fulfilled on both ends. The player's gotta want to make the story go on, and the DM's gotta want to please the players.
And the other thing I guess we can quickly say is, hey, your players are supposed to have kind of free reign. Like they're supposed to have free reign. They should be able to do what they want, but it has to progress. But at the same time, you have to make it so it progresses them in the story.
For God's sake, do not put up invisible walls. People will never forgive you for that.
Yeah.
God,
And
Bethesda.
and also, besides invisible walls, for God's sake, don't let the campaign like turn into a cesspool and completely stale.
Oh, when a campaign just leaves a bad taste of emptiness in your mouth.
It does when you're like, oh, I've been doing side quests for 10 hours. Oh.
If they're good side quests, then that's fine. I need to tell people eventually about the Fight Club and what an interesting
Fight Club?
I believe the Fight Club may have brought a death to one campaign in a sense, but I believe it was more the DM's lack of enthusiasm that brought an end to that campaign. But the Fight Club might have helped push it along to its death.
Yeah, it was.
I
It was
guess,
a good Fight Club session for me. That was my first experience with Fight Club, too.
oh yeah, I guess that's another thing. Don't make side quests. Don't make side quests their own massive quest line, I should say. Now, there are some video games or computer games where this works fine. A good example would be like in the Elder Scrolls or in Fallout. There are some quests that... There's some quest lines where like there's a lot of quests inside of them. But in D&D that doesn't necessarily really work. Because unlike a computer game, players can't go back to it at their leisure. There's a set amount of time that you can play this game at any given time. So always make sure that the main quest is large and it's the predominant one. If you're going to put in side quests, don't make them very long. Especially not long enough to compete with the main quest in length.
And so when a player says, hey, I should be able to do this, don't say, hey, well, screw you, the alchemy table explodes in your face.
Ah, I love that shit. Or just the or if you just say you can't do that, don't do that to players. If they're gonna do something ridiculously stupid, for example, let them do that and suffer the consequences. You can lighten the consequences if you must, but
Don't instant kill the character for doing something so minor like that.
yeah. But for the most part, if they're gonna do something stupid, let them pay for it. Alternatively, if it's just like, well, the game doesn't have rules for that, so we're not going to do it. I'm gonna say another good rule is house rule the crap out of the game. Uh,
Yeah, we have a lot of house rules, actually.
that's like that's my rule is like house rule the crap out of things, especially if you're playing 5th edition, because 5th edition D&D is far from exact on things. It's very abstract in numerous areas. Uh, and that's where house ruling is going to come in uh, to play most often.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in a good example of house ruling would be in 5th edition, the attacker wins if armor class, if the attack roll matches armor class. A lot of people house rule it, so that's the opposite. Defender wins because that's how it was done in earlier editions.
Mm-hmm. Also, it makes generally more sense if you think about it.
Yes, I would say it does make more sense in that case. Alternatively, you can just do house rules for other things. But I say especially if it's a area where there aren't rules for. I know the most difficult was in 5th edition because it's so streamlined. There's like alchemy, there's like herbalist sets, herbalist kits and stuff that you can use. But alchemy has been completely like stripped down and skeletonized in 5th edition, so alchemy rules are difficult. If you can't figure that stuff out from the game book, make it up yourself for the most part.
Exactly.
Most of the time, the players won't argue with you, and if they do, for most part, they don't have a leg to stand on.
No, no.
And when you're the DM, what the DM says goes for the most part. Not
Yes,
here,
this
bitch.
this this is true. Um, anything other really really important?
Well, we're probably missing like quite a few, but I think we've gone over the most major ones. And again, specifically, it's the rapport between the DM and the players, and most importantly, consulting the players. This is why session zeros, though they're things that we've gotten a lot better at doing them recently, though I found that for the most part we don't get the group together. A lot of times the DM's been talking to people one on one about things, but that's still basically the same. But a session zero, if you can do it, is pretty good. Get
Can
the
you
feel of
explain
the
what a session zero is?
a session zero is essentially, for those of you who don't know, uh, the players and the DM get together, and the DM essentially tells the party, well, the players, that is, in this case, what he's planning to do, what his expectations are, and then the players give their feedback, tell the DM what their expectations are for the campaign. Uh, they basically make their characters on that day. They give important character information. This allows the DM to not only work personal aspects into the plot, but also to maybe change things around if the majority of players are for or against a specific idea or something like that. Again, it's not giving into the players, but if no one wants to play the DM's idea of a campaign, well, the DM's got to get with the program in that sense.
Yeah, some of the worst things we've done though is that where Jacob comes along, he's like, "I've got this great idea for a campaign. Okay, so here's how it starts." And everyone's like, "Let's ditch this campaign and do that one." And that's how things go to shopkeeper.
Yep. Yeah, it's a vicious thing, but hopefully, we always hope for a brighter future.
We do.
Yeah, no,
And
it's
when
like
you
we have a whole 2 years of tenure, and now we're telling people what to do. We've really graduated.
we have I have 2 years of tenure. I have like 2 days of it, but that's besides the point.
Yeah. So essentially, uh, keep all these things in mind when you're
Mm-hmm.
going to DM, and I think you're gonna go the right way. But the main thing, the first thing you can do, is talk to your players, give them an idea of what you want to do. Communication is so important. I mean, given that this is, for the most part, a verbally delivered game, communication is incredibly important.
This
Uh,
is true.
and with that, I guess that's going to be it for this video. Uh,
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Feel free to express your opinions down
Or
below.
like tell us things we've forgotten, or tell us how we're scumbags, and I'm sorry, and how I should be sorry for making fun of your campaigning style.
Yeah, Brennan's a little
You-
bit of a faggot.
I'm a little exiled from the other group at times. I'm not going to explain why, but I am. Um, for various reasons. Some of them my fault, some of them not.
You're a meatball.
I can be a meatball at times.
All right. So that's gonna be it for this video. We'll see you soon, or rather, you'll hear us soon.
Uh, Possibly soon. You know how we are with this kind of thing.
3 months.
Sometimes,
3 months later.
actually, to think about it, my last video I uploaded solo. I didn't even say anything. So you know,
My last video, I was a child.
were you? I appreciate that. Yep. So thank you. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, thank you.
Yes, you have some pretty hefty endurance, I have to admit.
We deal with our strange rambling style.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.